Hi, everybody. Thank you, and welcome again to another Wednesday evening here on the East Coast. We are out of the weather's way, whichever way that goes. Thankfully
Mhm.
for now, but we have been getting some wind. But we're not here to talk about the weather. We're here to talk with Kelsey, not only a comic artist and one of our exec board members at C3, but also today's topic is very, very, very important. If you are a creator, or especially if you're also a person that wants to support other creators, where can you find your creator when all the social media apps decide to go to war or decide to just collapse on each other? That's what we're going to talk about. We're going to talk about newsletters today. So I want to say thank you so much for Kelsey for being here. And Kelsey, welcome. Let's go ahead and just clue people into a little bit of background info about you if this is your
Sure.
first time meeting you.
Yeah. So thanks for having me. I am Kelsey D. Crawford. As JM mentioned, I am one of the executive board members of the Columbus Cartoon Coalition. I have been making webcomics since 2013 and running my email newsletter for just about as long. I actually started my promotional a premise with having my website, a newsletter, and at the time, a I don't remember if I had set up a Facebook page or not. I might have, but I know that I started with my website and my newsletter, like first and foremost. And when I started my email newsletter, I started with the servicer MailChimp, and then some stuff happened. We'll get into that later, but some stuff happened and I switched over to MailerLite, and MailerLite is now my go-to platform for sending out email newsletters. There are a whole bunch of different platforms for sending out newsletters, and we can get into those when we get into those. But I started my newsletter because I realized I had so many web comics, and it would probably be really hard for people to keep track of them separately. So I figured I would run a newsletter to help have all the updates be in one place so that people would be like, oh, what's the latest from Johnson and Sir or Validation or The Legend of Jamie Roberts? And they could very easily just subscribe to my newsletter and stay up to date on that, as well as any in person appearances that I was making. Because often my newsletter is where I first announce, hey, I'm going to this convention. It's going to be on these dates or anything like that, because I have a lot going on at any given time, and the newsletter is the best place for me to like condense it down and be like, here's what's happening.
Okay, I have a lot of questions, and you touched on some of the more nitty gritty
Mm-hmm.
technical aspects of these letters. But
Mm-hmm.
just as a creative and as a person that would want to engage with another creator,
Mm.
let me ask you just a couple of basic questions from an end user point of view.
Sure.
So if I were to go and subscribe to your newsletter,
Mm.
are you saying that that's basically a one stop for all, almost like getting a Sunday comic, Sunday Comics, the newspaper, with all the different funnies and everything like that? Well, I can get all your web comics in one as they come out in 1 week. Like for example, if it's a monthly newsletter, am I
Mm-hmm.
getting like a whole bunch of updates of like 4 or 3 to 4 different web comics that you're running in addition to the news, behind the scenes, and tips or everything else you want to share?
So the way that I run my newsletter is I send it out once a week, and um, I mean, I can get into this now.
Okay.
Here, let me just add my stage here.
Okay.
So this is the back end, but I'll go ahead and open up my campaigns, and I will open up the most recent Friday newsletter that I sent out, because I send mine out on Fridays.
Okay. Weekly
Uh, the
then?
the public newsletter, I send it
Okay.
out on Fridays.
Okay.
We'll get into the other like subdivisions in a minute, but
Okay.
let's see more. We are going to okay. We're gonna hit preview because I'm pretty sure preview will show all of it. Yeah, it'll show all of it. Cool.
Okay.
So, uh, with the newsletter, I go into so here's some book projects that are coming up in the next couple of months. Um, and now let's get into New Punk Signal. And New Punk Signal is a web comic that I kept like exclusively for email newsletter subscribers.
Very nice. Very
So
nice.
that's what these are, and you can like zoom in and out as necessary if you're looking on your phone, for example.
Beautiful. Okay.
Thank you. And then I have actually segmented sections that cover different topics. So I have a what happened last week section,
Mhm.
which is where I put links for my other webcomic updates, as
Mhm.
well as links to YouTube videos that might have come out in that time period.
Okay.
I have another section called Meanwhile in the shop, which is where all of my shop updates are, being like, hey, new product just dropped, or hey, backers of this Kickstarter, here's where things are going right now.
Okay.
That's what that section is. And then this was a section that I had retired, but I've recently brought back, which is Featured Artist Friday, where I talk about my favorite artists, why it is that I like them, show off a piece of their art, and
Mhm.
talk about where it is that people can find out more about them.
Okay.
So I remember
Yeah.
actually giving a talk about doing newsletters when I was at a convention, because there was a panel about how to do newsletters. And I try to keep my newsletter to no more than 3 to 4 swipes of your finger when you're
Mhm.
scrolling. Um,
Oh, okay.
this is just a personal rule for me. Because like I know that there are some newsletters, particularly ones that send out once a month, that
Mhm.
they can scroll on for longer, but I try to keep mine to like 3 to 4 swipes,
Okay.
because I don't want to take up too much time from people, especially because I send these out on Fridays. I don't want to take up a whole bunch of weekend time.
Okay.
So that's why I keep mine the length that I do. But yeah, I really like having a section that's like, here's the webcomic that is exclusive to email subscribers.
Okay.
Because that was actually how I published Thoughtful Dinosaur, Charlie and Cloud, the bonus arc, and there's a comic that I'm bringing back from hiatus, Vanita and the Demon King, that
Mhm.
is also newsletter exclusive.
Okay. So then let me ask you. This is a weekly newsletter.
This is a weekly newsletter, yeah.
Okay, so that's why you also kind of like basically partition out the you're doing weekly updates, so
Mm-hmm.
there's no need to go and kind of like not in a negative context, but spam or
Right.
just info dump everything that's been happening for the past month though.
Yeah.
Okay, and then so you have an exclusive web comic
Mm-hmm.
or newsletter specific comic, and then the links to your other web comics updates as opposed to putting the thumbnail right then and there,
Mm-hmm.
or putting the comic in there. So it's almost like you have your feature comic that's exclusive for them just signing up for it, and then
Mm-hmm.
you want the click through links to them to actually go to this other websites to go check those comics because
Mm-hmm.
that traffic is important, right? I mean,
Yeah.
yeah, everyone, the almighty Google and everything else. If you don't already notice, the creator is obviously tracking the
Mm-hmm.
activity. They want you to stay more on their website. So if you do want to support the artist and you can't do that financially, clicking through to the links to go and read the comic or artwork that you might like anyways, right, is really
Mm-hmm.
going to help that person and tell the almighty alligator's rhythm that hey, we like spending time with this creator, and then therefore it might help that creator get more seen and let that creator be able to get some money in their pocket to do
Mm-hmm.
shows, to put out books and more merch to get to you. So
Right.
it's kind of like, if you want to be selfish, you are being selfish still. But if you also want to be giving, you're also being giving. So you can play both sides of the line if you want to. So,
You could.
yeah.
And the other thing about click-through rates too is that that is actually tracked on the email servicer that you are using. For example,
Nice.
MailerLite.
Okay.
So it'll tell me, because like this most recent sent campaign that I have is actually for a segment of my newsletter, because I have my newsletter separated out into different groups. I have one group that these are people who signed up when I was at Rathacon. I have another group that's like, these are people who signed up from Small Press Expo. Here's people who
Oh.
signed up from an event in Toledo, stuff like that. And then I have one group that is specifically my patrons through my Ko-fi page.
Mhm.
because they get a newsletter specifically for them.
Okay.
I call it the secret subscriber support signal, or the S4 for short.
Okay.
And I send that out on Mondays, and that includes previews for that upcoming week's webcomic updates,
Okay.
as well as like, here's a peek at what I'm making for Zine Club members. Here's a peek at what I'm making at for Print Club members. Here's a peek at an upcoming project and how that's going, and that sort of thing. Like, that's specifically for members of my Ko-fi clubs. So that's what we're looking at here. The Last Cent campaign was my Monday edition, which was sent out to my secret subscriber folks. It's a smaller group, recipients 20, whereas my overall subscriber count is like 312. It's still relatively small, but we'll talk about like the open rates here in a bit, because this smaller segment that had 20 recipients had an open rate of 40%, which is really, really high. We'll get to that. And 10% of people who opened clicked on stuff. I do not remember what CTOR stands for, but that's a metric that they also track. And if we go into my campaigns and we go to the sent campaigns, my Friday edition, which for this last Friday, it was male, female, pirate, because that was the name of my sticker that I had just released.
Okay.
So that went out to 314 recipients, of which 34% opened. And of that 34% that opened, 1.27% clicked on something.
Okay.
Yeah.
And
so on and so forth. Okay. So I have like an average click rate. Well, my click rate varies anywhere between 30 to 50%, which is actually really high. Back when I was on MailChimp, MailChimp actually had this feature at the time. I don't know if they still have this, where they would say, this is the industry average open rate of emails. And their industry average rate for artists was 2 to 4%.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. And I have an open rate of anywhere between 30 and 50%.
Yeah. I mean, when you think about how much email a person gets, or how many updates a person gets, just to get in the double percentages, of somebody actually taking the time to click and actually spend some time engaging with your material, that is quite impressive. For those of you that are rewatching this on YouTube later on, that's going to matter, and that'll matter to you if you're the one that's also watching this to learn how to basically start working with a newsletter. I had signed up for MailerLite quite a bit ago. I never actually went through it because it was a little intimidating for someone like me. But looking at the back end of it and looking at the fact that you can allocate all these different categories or boxes or buckets, coming from Toledo, coming from Michigan, coming from here, and then being able to kind of, allocate your content and your news and information to different types of groups is really cool. Yeah. I was not aware of the game. To butcher a Shaq quote here.
Yeah. So, there's like the whole back end is like, you can absolutely, and especially whenever you say, for example, you're at a table at a Comic-Con and you have a pad of paper on your table that says sign up for my email newsletter. Yeah. And you can just straightforwardly ask for the person's name and email, which is what I do. Because after every convention, I will take that sheet and I will update my MailerLite immediately with that new subscriber information. And when I input that information, I will make a note of like, this person signed up at this convention or in this city. Because there are some buckets that I track by city, and then there are some buckets that I track by convention, depending on how frequently I've gone to that convention. Yeah. So like if it's like a one-off show that I'm like, or if it's a new show for me and I'm like, I'm not sure that I'm going to come back here, I'll just be
Mhm.
like, this person signed up in this city.
Okay. Now, what
Um,
about? Go ahead. I'm sorry.
no, you're fine.
Okay.
But like, yeah, there are some categories that like I divided up by city and some that are by convention, or some that are like, these are my patrons, or like I have one group that's like, these are people who were patrons of me on Patreon but did not migrate over to Ko-fi. Like I have
Okay.
an entire separate subgroup just for that.
Okay. Um, so let me ask you, we talked about the back end a little bit and and who the newsletter is going to or
Mm,
who signed up for them. Now let's talk about the calendar year, seasonal wise. Is
mm.
there what is your experience, especially now that you have again, it's clear that you know your back end really well. Is there any type of peak times and do you see things changing when it comes to just the different seasons or the different parts of the calendar year, like, especially during like the holiday season when people might be looking for that particular specific unique
You
gift or
know,
whatever?
it's interesting that you ask that because it's actually not something that I've actively tracked.
Okay.
I have noticed that right around the holidays, I mean, I don't want to say right around the holiday season because my open and click through rates are pretty consistent throughout
Okay.
the year. So if anything,
Or what about after taxes hit?
after
So
taxes hit,
yeah, when everyone gets if they got a return, they're getting a return. They're like, okay, I got it.
right,
Yeah,
yeah.
use it
Again,
or lose it.
yeah. Again, don't really. That's not something I necessarily keep detailed track of.
All right.
I will say this. Um, Shortly after a convention, after I update my email list with all of the new subscribers, that there is some what folks in the industry would call churn, which
Okay.
is like, yeah, I've updated all these people onto the list. And then after about a week or two, there will be people who will unsubscribe. And
Okay.
that's normal.
That
That's
is normal.
totally normal.
Yeah, it is. It is.
Yeah.
People get a lot of email, and
Hmm.
sometimes sometimes it's the purge, and that's just
Yeah.
how it is. So
Yeah.
yeah,
Yeah. And people can unsubscribe for a lot of different reasons. If you
yeah.
want to track that, like that is up to you. Like I know MailChimp does have the service of like asking the exit question when somebody wants to unsubscribe, like, why are you
Mhm.
unsubscribing? And you can list out different options for that.
Okay.
I I don't recall if MailerLite has that option necessarily. It's just like, you want to unsubscribe? Okay, done.
Okay.
So like that's up to you and how you want to do it. I Okay, so I almost want to spill the tea about MailChimp and why it is that I switched away from MailChimp and went to MailerLite instead, but I don't want to get too spicy right away.
Okay. So let's
um,
put a pin in that,
yeah, we'll put a pin
and
in that.
we'll come back to some tea because it is important for people to know,
Yeah.
understand why if they want to not just ethically choose something, but also
Mm,
maybe why it might be beneficial for them to be a little bit more picky about who they're rolling with, just
right.
because you don't know in this day and age what could happen with social media or just services in general. I
Mhm.
do want to go back to 2018. I believe that's when you said you started doing a newsletter, right?
Right around 2016, 2017.
Oh, 26, 27. Okay.
Yeah,
Well, I wanted to know, and then I'll wrap on this when it comes to peaking and things of that nature, when it
sure.
comes to the trends.
Mhm.
When the pandemic happened, when one of the big C's that basically happened,
Mm,
a lot of people were stuck at home and they weren't able to go anywhere. And
mhm.
so they were just consuming everything virtually, literally, right?
Yeah.
What was, if anything, what was it like having a newsletter then during that time when everyone was kind of secluded? Was there not just was there more
Mm.
traffic, was there more activity, but also what was it like being a creator and fashioning, a conversation that you're about to send out
Mhm.
to someone that's been stuck in their house all day long, for example?
Right. Yeah. That's an interesting question because the pandemic hit me in a different way than probably most people.
Mhm.
Because it was right around when the pandemic hit that I actually managed to get a work from home job, not just making comics, but being chief creative officer for a startup.
Mhm.
So my work schedule was very different. Um, I mean, it's probably true for a lot of people who ended up having to work from home.
Yeah.
So, honesty there. I want to say, and this is something I probably should have prepared for by looking at past newsletters, but I want to say my newsletters right around that time were a lot more like, hey, since we're stuck at home anyway, I'm doing this virtual thing. Feel free to join me for this virtual thing.
Okay.
And being
Yeah.
like, hey,
That's what I was
I'm
wondering about.
yeah,
Yeah.
like,
Yeah.
and my newsletters were like the place where I was like, hey, I'm doing this virtual thing, or hey, I'm doing a live stream on these dates on YouTube or Twitch, or being like, hey, still updating webcomics. Now would be a good time to catch up on webcomics.
Yeah.
But I want to say that I still had my featured artist Friday shout outs happening at around that time, but
Mhm.
again, I won't know until I actually like look back on what I drafted for those, because I have newsletter drafts dating back to when I started my newsletter, and I
Yeah.
just have those archived on my external hard drive.
Gotcha.
Yeah, so
Okay.
yeah,
Yeah, I'm just basically looking for the well, you
mhm,
already touched on it, the general vibe and what was it
mhm,
like being able to reach somebody that might be
mhm.
like, hey, you know what? Come hang out with me for a little bit. You know what I
Yeah,
mean? Yeah,
yeah,
just kind of giving them like, maybe a break from the monotony and
yeah.
and all that though. So I
I
mean
like to think,
again, yeah,
yeah.
testament to the newsletter that may be an unspoken
Mhm.
resource that people aren't utilizing. And that's kind
Yeah,
of why we're having this topic, right? Is
yeah,
that it is a resource that unless you're very savvy when it comes to social media marketing or just the hustle, for lack of a better phrasing right now. Um,
I have so many thoughts on that, but go ahead.
the phrasing, I know that's why I put quotes.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah, I not to put venom in the conversation, but yeah. So basically, but it is an untapped resource, and maybe it's an aspect that people don't completely
Mhm.
utilize or even realize that it's there for you. And
Yeah,
that makes sense.
or they know that it's there, but they don't know the first thing about how to start it, which is why we're having this
That
conversation.
that would be me. That's why I'm here to ask questions. So
Right,
let's get
yeah.
into it. Let's get into
Yeah,
it
yeah.
then. So
So
okay.
I got into making my email newsletter because again, I wanted to have a one place where people could find all of my updates because I had so much stuff happening at the same time. And it was like, hey, here's a newsletter where you can find everything that's going on. And also right around the pandemic, I want to say, is when I started using my newsletter to be like, hey, here's some stuff that's going on, like emotionally speaking, and it's rough, but I hope that this serves as a nice break from social media, because I do like to think that email newsletters are a nice break from the usual noise that you see on social media.
I
um
think so personally.
yeah,
Yeah.
I like to think so.
Yeah.
And there are some folks who do use their newsletters to send out like not emotional but like educational
Mhm.
stuff, like um there are some newsletters that's like, hey, sign up for this like 5-week email course about how to do this thing, like how to do
Mhm.
watercolors or how to learn this particular technique, stuff like that.
How
And
to walk
like,
like a sloth.
yeah, walk like a
Yeah.
sloth
Yeah.
kind of thing, but and
That
that works for them. um and then there are some folks that are like, no, the only way that people are going to subscribe to your newsletter is if you offer them some kind of a freebie. And I'm like, I'm already offering comics. So
I think that's one heck of a freebie.
I
So
think that's a heck of a
yeah.
freebie already. So
Yeah.
yeah,
Yeah.
there's a lot of stuff that I do provide online for free, not just comics, but like videos as well.
Oh yeah, no, you're very giving. I mean, I mean, I'm subscribed to your email newsletter, and I also hang out with you on other forums and things of that nature.
Heck yeah.
And you're constantly providing resources and all that. I don't know how many times
I try.
I've hit you up on DMs. Hey, how do I do this, or what is this about? So I mean,
And
so
then
thank
I
you.
have something bookmarked.
Yeah. So I mean,
Yep.
like, you're definitely a resource. Yeah. Again, thank you for being here with us. So yeah, in regards to just the amount of content, not just content, but the amount of service and
Mhm.
value that you can provide with the newsletter, as well as like utilizing it as its own art form,
Yeah.
because this is another vehicle for your
Yes.
expression, right? You
Mhm.
can be creative with this newsletter, and that's why I was like, I want to do a newsletter. I want one and all in one, stop
Mhm.
place for people to find my stuff, because I
Mhm.
feel so scattered. And then I also don't want it to suck. I want to have a little bit of I want to have a little bit of fun with it. I want it to
Mhm.
be creative. I want to maybe get a little prosy, a little write with it, a little art with it. And I want it to be kind of like not too intimate in a weird kind of way that some of my age shouldn't be saying, but I mean like more of like a way of like that, hey, you're gonna get this story before anyone else sees it, before it
Yeah.
even thinks about being in print.
You're
And
you're getting the more transparent version of me,
yeah.
not the polished social media. This is the
Exactly.
highlight reel
Exactly.
stuff.
Yeah,
Yeah.
this is when I don't get a fresh cut. This is the
Mhm.
Grizzly Adams version of me.
Yeah.
So
This is my post sunburn head.
yeah. So but yeah, so the art of a newsletter.
Mhm.
Um you're gonna get into more of how you set that up and how you choose certain things. But just the
Mhm.
creative aspect of it was what were off the top of my head, or let me ask you, what were a couple pros and cons to finding the right balance and how you wanted what you wanted to provide to people with your newsletter?
Right. Yeah. So I will say this layout that I showed off, where it's like
Hmm.
comics, what happened last week, meanwhile in the shop, featured artist Friday.
Yeah.
That's the model that I am currently employing. It is one that I have used previously. It
Hmm.
may not stick around. Nothing
Hmm.
about the newsletter format is permanent.
Okay.
It is a constant work in progress.
All right.
And that's one of my more favorite things about the newsletter, is that it is
Hmm.
a work in progress. Like, this is a formula that works for me for now.
Hmm.
There might be something else that pops up later that I'm like, how about I give this a try and
Hmm.
put it up that way? Don't know what that will be. I know previously, um, I would have sections of the newsletter that um there were sections of the newsletter previously that I would have links to more tutorials,
Hmm.
because at one point I was like dipping my toes into doing more tutorial stuff.
Yeah.
Um, I have since discovered that this kind of a format that we're doing right now resonates more
Hmm.
with me, where we're
Gotcha.
talking through it.
Yeah.
Because like there are other people that I feel like do the tutorial format way better than I ever could.
Okay. When
Bless
you
them
say
for
that,
that.
you mean like over the screen or blog style, where you're basically like
Yeah, where you're
step by
breaking it
step.
down step by
Yeah.
step and being like, so
Yeah.
here's where you start. This is the tool that
Mhm.
you use to get this kind of effect and that sort of
Yeah.
thing. I did my toes into doing that sort of
Mhm.
format for blogs, and
Yeah.
then posting on the newsletter being like, hey, I wrote a blog about how to work with colored pencils or whatever. Um, and like there the thing with that is that people who signed up for my newsletter did not necessarily sign up for tutorials.
Okay.
They signed up to keep up with me, to be like, oh, what adventure is Kelsey up to now? They didn't
Okay.
necessarily sign up for a breakdown on how to work with colored pencils to get this kind of effect,
Okay.
or whatever tutorial that I was doing at the time. So I try to be cognizant of why it is that people sign up for my newsletter in the
Mhm.
first place.
Okay.
Whenever I draft up updates.
All right. Regarding the hierarchy of the newsletter, obviously headers are important, right?
Mm,
The kind of like the emphasis, the thing that you
right.
would visually emphasize for look here, this is it. Do
Mm,
you put the nugget, the golden nugget, the gem of that thing further down to get people to read the other stuff and then get to the part they want? Like, how do you dictate what is primary, secondary, as far as the hierarchy goes, like to get them to navigate your newsletter. For
Right.
example, you
Right.
had the webcomic first and the back end that we just saw. Now, if they're just looking for webcomics, they got what they wanted or they needed, and then they can check out. But if there's other stuff you want them to get to, like how do you decide? And that's because you mentioned that the format is fluid. So
yeah, often the email subject line dictates how I structure my updates.
Okay.
So if I, for example, in last week's email, I wanted to announce that I had a new sticker design in my shop.
Okay.
So I went with, because the sticker that I did, I have it somewhere. You know what?
Well, let me go to the back end. Yeah, I saw.
I'll just bring you up on the back end again.
There you go. Yeah.
And bring up the newsletter so that I can show you the sticker design.
Now, I'm not sure if this also justifies the call to action or a mini call of action. So I mean, I know somebody asked about that.
Yeah. So the subject line is often the thing that I structure my newsletter around, but it is also the thing that I feel like would possibly entice people to open the newsletter up in the first place.
The hook.
Right. Yeah. Now, there is a way in MailerLite, and I'm pretty sure MailChimp too, where you can actually test which subject line opens up more emails for like the first hour, and then after that hour it will take that data and then use the headline or the subject line that opened the most and use it for the remaining emails that have yet to be sent out.
And that's an automated
thing that MailerLite and MailChimp do just as in their system. If you wanted to do A/B testing for that sort of thing.
So kind of like testing out thumbnails on YouTube to see which is gonna have more.
Which is a new feature on YouTube. They did not used to do that.
No, but I like the fact that they have it for this client as well. As well as it being automated, and it's not something you have to keep track of again and manually go and do. So
but
nice.
The reason that I named my email newsletter for last week, I named it male, female, pirate, was because that's the sticker.
Gotcha.
But framing it this way, I would imagine got people intrigued to be like, why these questions? Why is the solution pirate?
Yeah.
And getting them to open the email so that they can see what's going on there. So.
And then that's the beginning of your first opening. Section.
That's my hook. The top section here is actually like the prelude before I get to that part. Then there's the comics, and then there's the what happened last week, and then meanwhile in the shop is that's what's happening.
Okay,
that's
so for
why
those
the headline is that way.
For those that don't know, that are watching, why? Okay, you in the opener, I'm tripping on my own words. It's been a long day. I've been hanging out with first graders all day for art camp. Fun times though. And a dog that says, "Hey, you can't sleep either." Okay, so we got the email topic line. That's the hook. And then we talk about it mention briefly, but we don't show you the sticker yet. Why? Because we want you to stay tuned, keep checking out, and then we get to the sticker itself. So. I think it's the same thing when you're doing YouTube or doing a video. You tease it and show it and mention it, but I mean, stay a while and engage, invest, because there's some other things I want to talk to you about or show you that you might want to be interested in. And then here's the sticker or here's the thing that you came here for. But by the way,
I literally have in the opening section of this email, and now for everything else in this newsletter.
So okay. So it's just really interesting to me how, because as a person who wants to do a newsletter, I'm just like, how do I even begin to start organizing this? And what is the gem? What's the call to action? What's the pop? What's going to keep a person on there? How do I get them to the finish line? Or so do you basically at the end of the newsletter, is that what? Let's either confirm or dispel a myth. At the very end of the newsletter, the parting ways before you say goodbye, what that information is, that the least emphasize or least important. I don't want to say important. It's kind of a bad word, but I mean, before you say goodbye to them, whatever's comes before that, is that the least important of that particular update. So if they don't make it all the way through, even though you try to keep yours in four swipes, which is really smart, by the way. So would you say that the least information goes on the bottom if you were to rank those beats, or is it not about that at all?
I would say it's not really about that at all. If you're
Okay.
writing a press release, absolutely keep the most relevant information towards the top of the page, and then
Okay.
have like the most to least important stuff in descending order. That's how
Okay.
you do a press release. When you're
Okay.
doing a newsletter,
Hmm.
the way that I do it is, again, I have the subject line dictate what it is that
Hmm.
I want the focus to be. Um,
Hmm.
but I just want people to open it up, catch up on what they want to catch up on, and
Hmm.
before they head out, I give a shout out to an artist who I like, and I
Okay.
made this particular graphic that says "Thanks for reading. You are awesome." Smiley face.
Hmm.
I make all of my headers for my email
Okay.
newsletter. So what happened last week? Meanwhile, in the shop, featured artist Friday. That's all my
Mhm.
handwriting, and I made those.
So this is an art form to you. This is whole. It's not just to depart with the wholesome.
Mhm.
Shout out to another artist trying to like extend grace and extend a baton to somebody else as well, which is
Mhm.
really commendable and wholesome. But also
Aw.
you're being genuine with the message. So
Mhm.
it's not just an art form. It's also a labor of love.
It
Is
is.
that fair to say? Okay.
It is. It
Yeah.
is.
Again, I mean, like an untapped medium, right? Like
It is.
another untapped art form.
Yeah.
So
The nice
yeah.
thing about MailerLite is that it actually like saves all of the assets that you use, so that you
Mhm.
don't have to constantly upload stuff. I can
Mhm.
just like I can't really demonstrate it here
Mhm.
because I'm not clicking on the back end for that particular purpose. But
Okay.
if I wanted to upload, say, a different comic strip for this part, I could very easily like click that particular widget and it'll bring up the gallery of
Mhm.
assets that it has currently saved for me, which includes a lot of the stuff that I've already drawn, like
Mhm.
what happened last week, meanwhile in the shop, that stuff, and also any other assets that I have uploaded previously.
Okay.
So it saves that information for
Very
me.
nice. Yeah.
Yes,
Okay.
it's really, really nice. And it
Yeah.
actually makes it way easier to do the email newsletter specific comic updates,
Okay.
because my secret subscriber folks get those updates on Monday. And then on
Okay.
Friday, when I'm sending a update
Friday.
out on Friday, I can just go into the saved image assets and be like, okay, where was that comic that I posted on Monday? There it is. Click insert.
Okay.
And
Cool. All right.
I don't have to upload it a second time. It's already saved in the system.
So then that kind of brings us to workflow, right?
Yeah.
Um, Probably like we can get into workflow now, or we can get into some of these questions that are more about just getting started, as well as the cost of services. They're more of like the fine print, I guess you could say. You
Yeah,
know,
let's
um,
actually address some of those questions
yeah, yeah.
because yeah,
Before we
because
do, though, I want to say that if you want to know more about this type of stuff, Kelsey is awesome with the resource. And maybe if you all comment on this video later on YouTube and mention it more often than not, maybe Kelsey, maybe we have a tech with
like a
Kelsey or
tech
something like
demo.
that. Yeah, like for the other parts of creative, business entrepreneurship, as well as just how to do something in a certain particular software, or how to draw this or whatever. So
Sure.
but yeah, okay. So the first question that we are going to cover is, what are the best free or low cost budget friendly newsletter services? Excuse me.
Yes, yes. So there's a bunch on the radar, and I've actually poked around because, and I'll go ahead and spill the tea here. My
It's time.
my previous servicer was MailChimp, because MailChimp actually professes to do a whole lot more than email newsletters. It's also a it's also a way to offer like online store functions.
Yeah.
And directly sell to customers if you wanted to do that, which you can do that in MailerLite as well, just for the record. But with MailChimp can do a lot. The problem that I had with MailChimp is that it has really bad UI, user interface. Because here's what happened. I had grown my email newsletter to about 378 subscribers at the time that this happened in 2019. I remember this because I was still working part-time at Sheets, because this happened right before my shift. Okay. And I was so mad when this happened, because what happened was I was trying to clean up my email newsletter and trying to delete emails because the thing about MailChimp at the time was that it would just save emails from people, even if they unsubscribed from you, and they just kept it in the database.
Okay.
And I wanted to remove those emails because I was like, I don't need this clogging up my feed. Yeah. But the problem is I hit the check all button thinking, oh, I'm just going to check all of the emails that are just on this page. It checked every email.
Oh, wow.
Every email on the newsletter that I had saved up to that point. And I hit delete, 378 emails gone. Oh. I was so mad. So mad. And as far as I know, MailChimp has not fixed this.
Oh, that sucks.
Like, it sucked.
User error and accidents are a thing, especially when we were dealing with screens and looking at them all day and clicking on things. Or the cat decides to go and walk across, or the kid decides that it's going to. Yeah, I won't go into how my son helped me with my artwork one time, and all the skulls I painted were all smeared mess. And I was like, I guess I'm repainting that. He's like, I'm helping, Dad. I'm helping you. Like, yes, you are, buddy.
Yep, my kitten will walk across my tablet, and I'll be like, why am I in precise mode now? And it's because his paw bumped onto one of the hotkeys.
That sucks. And so to think that, wait a minute, you don't have a backup, even like a previous versions, like your standard, Microsoft.
Not in the MailChimp software. I had saved my email sign-up sheets from conventions. Mm-hmm. Now there were some that I was missing. There were a lot like pre-2016 that I lost. Okay. Because storage issues, but I still had a bunch that were like really recent. So I worked with my younger sibling because they were in data entry at the time. And I was like, I will pay you $25 if you will just go through all of these scanned images and just make a database for this so that I can then upload it into my next servicer. And they were like, done.
I'm just baffled that MailChimp didn't have a previous version for accidents like this. You know what I mean?
Yeah, no.
As big of a client as they are, to be able to, as many people as they service, it's like, what do you do if somebody like high up on those numbers, does that, oh wow,
Yeah. So, there was no way to recover that data. There was no way to recover, because it was like, it checked and it was like, are you sure you want to do this? It cannot be undone. And it's like, why is there no undo button for this? Gotcha. But so after that, I was so angry at MailChimp that I just quit the platform.
Gotcha.
Yeah. It took a while to find a replacement, and I went to MailerLite because at the time it was free for the first 10,000 subscribers.
Okay.
Now they have since updated, and I think it's free for your first 1,000, which is perfectly serviceable for me. I actually got grandfathered into this iteration that they're in now because I had signed up when they were still using their previous layout, which is why the email newsletter looks the way that it does, because I'm not sure that MailerLite currently allows you to customize your layouts like that. I think they want you to use the templates that they have already saved. But again, I got grandfathered in being like, I have a template that I made in this previous iteration of MailerLite. I'm just going to keep using that.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right. So that's something for people to consider if they want a certain type of look.
Exactly. Yeah.
Okay. What are some other options?
So the other ones that I know of are Well, Tiny Letter was a thing.
Mhm.
I don't think that they're a thing anymore. But the other thing about Tiny Letter was that it was a sub brand of Mailchimp, which is
Okay.
why I did not use it. Because I was like, you already done me bad once, Mailchimp.
Yeah.
I'm not letting you do that again. I looked at, there is a servicer called moo.com that I was thinking about doing, but they require an email with a custom domain, and there were a number of other hoops that I was like, this is really obnoxious. I'm not
too
doing
much. Too much. Yeah.
Yeah, which I know that's one of the questions that was asked was how do you set up a email with a custom domain? And we'll get to that because there's some technical bits for that. But as far as email services go, a lot of folks whom I've been talking with online have been using, I think it's like Button Letter or something like that. But it's one of the smaller ones. I really have to double check. I will say when this is uploaded as a replay, I will leave a comment down in the comment section below of the servicers that my friends use,
Okay.
so that you can poke around and do the research for yourself.
There we go.
But that will be after this uploads.
Yeah.
Keep your eyes on the comment section, y'all. I will leave it in a pinned comment.
Comment section's on YouTube, and I don't know if it makes it into Kelsey's next newsletter. If Kelsey decides to flash back to the interview that they did,
Sure.
maybe there's a few suggestions you could throw in there too if you want to. As Ghost, yeah. I think it's called Ghost. Is that one? Another one?
Ghost is one.
Yeah. Okay.
Ghost is one that you have to pay for, which is why I didn't go with it.
That's probably why I didn't use it.
Yeah. I mean, it's somewhat more budget friendly, but it is an upfront cost to use.
It's just another cost. Yeah. So
yeah, exactly.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. All right.
So yeah, but there's a few different options that exist out there. Yeah. Another thing I can do is I can make a blog post on my website.
There we go.
And leave a comment there, or just make a blog post and leave the link to the blog post in the comment section, or however I choose to do it. But I will definitely make a blog post being like, here's some email newsletter servicers that you can use. But I really like MailerLite. That's the platform that I use, and I'm going to be sticking with that for as long as I can feasibly get away with it.
Yeah, I think we could maybe schedule later on down the line another follow-up talk with not just one particular service like newsletters, but maybe how's the flow work between website, newsletters, and then blog, and how you can mention something in the newsletter, and then for people that want more info, you can expand and go in deep on the blog and how that works all the way from the website all the way up to the convention table. We can always follow up with a couple more episodes of this type of topic if people want to know that information.
I will say, because you brought this up, and I want to bring this up before I forget.
Okay.
One of the other reasons that I break my email subscribers into different groups, being like, this group is from SPX, this group is from DC, this group is from Toledo, is because sometimes when I go to a convention in that particular region and I want to offer a freebie of some sort, I will send an email to that group specifically saying, hey, if you come to my table and you mention this code word, I will have a freebie for you.
Yep.
That was something that I used to do a lot before the pandemic. I'm thinking about bringing this feature back.
Well, it's not just that. You could do an exclusive cover. I've seen some creators do, like, this particular cover is for this show in this region. Or you might have a debut. Like, we have a Kickstarter coming up, an anthology, right?
Yep.
I'm not sure exactly yet, but who's to say that won't hit at the same time a specific show hits? And that's where that newsletter savvy would come into play, I think,
Oh, so, absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely. So. You can use the newsletter for all kinds of like fun promotional stuff.
Yeah, I'm starting to I'm really, really finding the appeal of a newsletter, especially in spite of all these different apps that are just
Oh yeah.
I don't know. I don't have executive function as it is, and now you're asking me to keep track of things that, I'm Gen X, okay? I should be outside playing right now till it gets dark, So
My brain was built to forage for berries.
yeah. Speaking of which, we did that yesterday, oddly enough.
Nice.
Yeah, they got a little bush going down here too, but a bunch of bugs though. But do you want to get into the custom domain now? Do you want to go ahead and move on to the
Yeah,
next question?
let's go ahead and tackle that, because that, I think, is a new requirement for MailerLite, is that
Okay.
you use a custom domain email.
Mhm.
Now, getting a custom domain email the way that I did it is because I already had web hosting for my webcomics and my website. So I went into my web host, which is DreamHost,
Mhm.
and I went into DreamHost, and DreamHost actually has a command on the left-hand side that's like manage your emails, and you can or something like that. But like you can basically go into your web host, and your web host will have, like, if they're anything like DreamHost, they will have a step-by-step guide for here's how you set up a email with your custom domain,
Okay.
and doing it that way. Now, my other recommendation is that if you are able to do that, get your email set up so that you have that custom domain, and then download Thunderbird,
Okay.
because Thunderbird will actually link up with your custom domain email so that any emails sent to that custom domain email can go into your Thunderbird, so that you don't have to log into your web host to look at that stuff.
Oh, yeah. I hate trying to log into some type
Yeah.
of yeah.
Now, the thing of it is that can get kind of technical.
Yeah.
So yeah, definitely follow the steps if you can. But there are wikis that, like, if you have trouble, because Thunderbird is developed by the same people who did Firefox and a bunch of other
Oh, okay.
projects like that. So
Gotcha.
they have
Okay.
pretty detailed wikis of like, oh, if you hit
Yeah.
a snag, here's where you go.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, I don't know. Maybe that's an open market for you to make zines about, cartoon zines that demystify that, for dummies or for hunters. I don't know.
That's
So,
a thought. That's a thought.
again, but you gotta let Kelsey know if that's something you want, because
Yeah.
it's
If
gotta
if
it's, it's
if you
gotta make
want,
it's
like,
gotta make sense and make dollars.
well, if you want informational zines about like how to do a thing, I am absolutely happy to do that if there's a
Yeah.
demand
So
for it.
if
You
there's a
just got to
demand
let me
for
know
it,
if
yeah.
there's a
Yeah, we don't want to get in the way of pirates and all the other cool things that Kelsey's doing. So, um,
demand.
in regards to the custom domain, so that sounds like a blog post waiting to happen.
Oh
With the
yeah,
more technical things.
yeah,
We
yeah.
already
But
talked about. Go
mhm.
ahead.
The short answer is, if you have web hosting through a servicer like DreamHost, log into DreamHost and figure that out.
Okay.
But if you do not have web hosting, I'm not sure. You might need to Google that.
Yeah, all mine was Squarespace. I left Bluehost, I believe. So all my domains are now with Squarespace, and
Gotcha.
they might have their own client. So I don't know how that works yet.
Yeah,
So,
I am
um,
not sure how Squarespace works.
yeah.
Yeah.
So, we did talk about how the frequency of sending out newsletters. We covered weekly versus monthly, and
Mhm,
and the why of what of how the why and the how of how you do yours. And we
mhm,
also got to look at the metrics already. So that was two of the questions.
mhm.
So the other question is, what is your call to action? Now I feel like we could fill up like the last part of this interview with a call to action.
Mhm.
First, for those that don't know or that need a reminder, what is a call to action, at least from your point of view?
Okay, so a call to action is when the host is calling you to do something to
Mm.
engage with the media. Um, the most common call to action example is if you have been on YouTube for any length of time, you will know the call to action, because that is when the host will say, be sure to like, comment, and subscribe. That's a
Click
call to action.
notifications, ring the
Mhm.
bell,
Yep.
like or dislike the post. My
Yep.
call to action was, you got to fight for your right to party. I mean, but
Yeah. Yeah.
just a little bit of Beastie Boys there, but that's just a little bit of cringe. If we don't get to cringe in this interview, then I'm not doing my job right. But anyways, back
Right.
to call of action.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. Yeah. So usually when it comes to my email newsletter, um So I have a couple different calls to action. One, if I'm at a convention, I will have a pad of paper that says sign up for the newsletter.
Okay.
Because this is more direct than social media, and social media is on fire.
Yeah.
At least right now. That's what I
Is that
that's what I
written? Is that
subtitle it.
literally written?
It
Oh,
is. Yeah,
okay. I was
it's a
like,
written
that's a
pad.
cartoon waiting to happen. I would remember that, and I would be compelled to sign up for that if I saw that.
Yeah.
You know. So,
Previously, when I had my newsletter sign up thing, I would have it say like, it's free, it's spam free, and it's the best way to know when my next in-person appearance is or when my next book is coming out. Nowadays, I just have it saying like, because social media is on fire and this is more fun anyway.
now, for the people that might be leaving your table or don't get a chance to sign up, would a QR code on your actual materials and products that they may walk away with, even a business card, is that similar to call to action? Can you put your a QR code to the sign up for the newsletter? Would that work? Is that a thing?
QR codes could work.
Okay.
I don't use QR codes for my newsletter anymore.
Anymore? Okay.
Not to encourage people to sign up for them. I used to have them on my sign up sheets. Because I considered it a accessibility feature for people who either had too shaky a hands or were not feeling confident in their handwriting. I was like, well, there's a QR code. So that's an option for you.
Okay.
So, if you want that accessibility feature for folks, consider adding a QR code to your sign up sheets.
Okay.
But the other call to action that I do is on my website. I actually have it integrated because my website uses WordPress. WordPress integrates with MailerLite. And there is a widget that I have in place now that's active where a little pop-up will pop up saying sign up for the email newsletter. And I have it set so that if you X that window out, it will not pop up again for about a week.
Okay.
Because I want to be considerate.
Yeah.
But that pop-up will pop up and ask if you want to sign up for the email newsletter. The other thing, though, about MailerLite is that it allows you to build landing pages.
Oh, very nice.
So
okay.
I highly recommend landing pages.
Okay.
Because this was actually how I grew my email newsletter one year for Free RPG Day. Because I was getting ready to release a new RPG. And I was like, well, what's the best way to get the word out? Because I'm not going to be able to make it in person to Free RPG Day at this local shop because I'm going to be out of town. How can I get people interested in this game if I can't make it in person? And I was like, I will offer it as a free download on my email newsletter.
Okay.
And so I made a landing page with a countdown ticker saying so many days until this game comes out. Sign up for the newsletter.
All right, cool. Yeah,
I got a lot of people that way.
Oh, cool. Oh, man.
And I followed through on that promise that the day of, I sent out an email to everybody on the newsletter saying, here's a download for this new game that I made.
Nice. Again, that's that value that we were talking about earlier, what the value that you could offer people if they're going to spend their time clicking through and engaging with your newsletter, aka with your creative spirit, your voice. This is an opportunity for you to also reward them for their time and their patience amongst all the spam and all the other Kohl's cash coupons and pants and everything else that they could have clicked on. Okay.
Shop at Route 21.
Yeah, or the try this new miracle, cure to grow your hair back, stuff like that. So, okay, so call to action. So then, let me ask you this: you have the pop-up that does for the website, but then it's not annoying once they decide not right now. But should that go away and then they read through? They go, actually, you know what? I kind of do like what I'm seeing here. Do you have at the bottom another opportunity, not a pop-up, but just integrate into the site for them to sign up for the newsletter if they want to?
Yeah.
Okay.
On my web comics, yes.
Okay.
I will have in the description of the comic pages, like, in that section where like the author can leave whatever comments that they want, I'll have a link there.
Okay.
I also usually have a link in the sidebar for sign up for the email newsletter.
Okay.
And if that's not the case, I will be sure to update that. But I try to leave options open.
Okay, so what we're talking about here is basically a passive way of being able to still, mention that I have newsletters. I have a way you can keep up with things. That will just come to you. You'll come to your inbox, and then there's the more, I don't want to say aggressive, but the more active way of mentioning the newsletter, which is that button that pops up when you initially go to that, or short of Kelsey seeing you at the convention and having you sign up for the newsletter. So active and passive ways of getting things to happen and engaging with your audience or potential audience and readers. Okay. Anything else in regards to call to action?
I think we hit a lot of the big points, honestly.
Yeah. Okay. So ultimately, if you could only say one thing about the newsletters, okay, let's say two things. One thing to a creator who does not have a newsletter, or anyone, right. Like, what would you be like? What would your fortune cookie say to them about this is about newsletters in general?
The fortune cookie, you just open it up and it's only going to say do it.
Do it. Okay. Okay. All right.
Yeah.
So
even if you feel like you don't have a lot to say, I would still encourage you to have a newsletter. Even if you don't do it weekly, you can absolutely do it bi-weekly or monthly.
Yeah.
And by bi-weekly, I mean once every 2 weeks.
Yeah.
Like, as long as it's relatively consistent. Because I know a bunch of indie creators who I follow their newsletters, and there are some who send out once a week, and there are some who only send out once a month. As long as you have a schedule, even if you only do it once a month, just do it once a month. It doesn't have to be like right on the first or right on the last day of the month or whatever it is that you decide. But still, absolutely do the newsletter. Because it's not just a matter of like, oh no, social media is on fire. It's also a matter of staying connected more directly with the people who like your work.
Yeah. That whole terminology in business and entrepreneurship about finding your 1,000 followers or fans of you and the work that you do. That's the newsletter, right? Yeah. I mean, the newsletter. That's the people you're trying to find amongst the sea of all the social media, all the wars of the algorithms and all the different competing apps. You're trying to find those that you're trying to find your people, and the newsletter's like, hey, here's my flag, right here in the sand.
Exactly.
So now, what would you say to a person who is not the creator, but they're a potential they meet you at a show, they come across your book. What would you say to that end user, that potential follower or fan who opens up that fortune cookie in regards to the newsletter, and why should they sign up for the newsletter?
Okay. It's funny that you asked that, because most people who come up to my table just sign up for the newsletter after talking with me for like 5 minutes.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
That's just a gift of your game, though. The gift of gab and gift of your game. You're good at what you do.
Yeah.
So,
I can't help it.
Yeah. But you also have the material and the content and all the you have the backlog to back it up, though. So I mean, that should help the confidence, right?
It does help to have work on your table if it appeals to people, they can sign up for your newsletter then.
Okay. What about maybe if you're on a panel and you're in a room with people who are just now meeting you amongst a bunch of other creators? Why should they maybe sign up for their newsletter then?
Okay. So I'm picturing it now. I am on the stage. There's a microphone in front of me, not to my side, which is what it's currently at, but like directly in front of me.
Ben's in the back with his sign, until his arm gets tired.
Yeah.
The audience, you're trying to ignore Ben, right there.
Yeah, I'm trying to ignore Ben. I'm looking out at the audience, and I'm like, I'm giving my closing remarks, and it's like, where can people find you? And I'll be like, you can also sign up for my email newsletter if you liked my hot takes in today's panel. But also it's a good way to keep up with all of my comics and to reach out to me if you have any further questions. Because I have my email newsletter actually set up so that people can reply directly to it, and it arrives in my it arrives in my Thunderbird email box.
Okay. Yeah, my internet cut out there for a minute though, because I don't know, the weather's acting crazy now. Um, yeah, so but no, awesome. Yeah, okay. I threw a couple curveballs at you, but I mean you're ready, and it's good information. So is there anything else you'd like to weigh in on regards to newsletters?
With regards to newsletters, so I'm thinking about in my headspace why it is that I did not jump on making on newsletters right away.
Mm-hmm.
And actually, one of the talking points that made me go, "Oh, I'm not sure that I want to do newsletters," is there were some people, maybe they were well-meaning, maybe they weren't. At least back in 2016, there were people who were like, "Email is dead. Why use email? Why use email newsletters? Nobody opens up emails. Why would you put your effort into this thing?" But my counter argument to that is, so do y'all remember MySpace?
And I met my wife on MySpace. Yes, I remember MySpace.
Yeah, you remember MySpace and how nobody goes there anymore?
Yeah.
So like what happens when a social media platform that was your go-to place suddenly stops working?
Mm-hmm.
What happens if someplace else that you post art on suddenly stops working?
Yeah.
What if the platform that you're posting art on, like Webtoons, does something shady and it forces you to leave the platform?
Yeah.
Your newsletter is going to be the most direct route to the people who want to support you and your work. So that is why you should do a newsletter.
Yeah, ultimately that's it. That's a conversation with you and them. Yeah, at the end of the day, without a bunch of ads. So other than that, speaking of support, any other announcements that you'd like to let people know before we leave? News and stuff like that.
Yeah. So biggest announcement. JM, mark this on your calendar. This Sunday is when the Universal Flaws of Robotics launches on Kickstarter.
Okay, awesome. Universal.
Yeah, you did the cover art for that, my dude.
I did do the cover art. I was like, yeah. So I'm very proud.
It's amazing.
Thank you so much. Thank you. It was a level up for me. I tried some things I hadn't tried before on that, and I'll say the rest of the talk for when we're going to do a whole bunch of interviews and a whole bunch of content regarding more about the book. But yeah, it's dropping here this week, and I just found this out. You can tell how well I read my emails, but here's a link to it. Yeah, so I mean, I'm excited about it, and it looks fun.
Heck yeah!
And then my YouTube history, I see the little video, and I'm like, oh my god, man, that's my artwork right there on YouTube. I even got an eyebrow raised for my son, and if you know my son, it's hard to get him going, So, but anyway, so that book, third in the series of anthologies, but self-contained stories for the most part. If robots are your thing, or you're wondering what's going on with all this AI stuff, you might have the answers in this book, in this Kickstarter. So so check it out. Link there. And Kelsey, where else can they find you?
So everybody can find me and all of the work that I do and all of my web comics and signing up for my email newsletter. If you're so interested, you can just head over to kelseydcrawford.com. Again, a little pop-up will pop up if you want to sign up for the email newsletter, but my webcomics, YouTube videos, blog posts, everything is going to be at kelseydcrawford.com. And
is the newsletter under a different name, just so they know it's you?
Oh, no, it's under my name.
Okay, good. Because I get clever with the names on all my things. You can see there's a little new name I'm playing around with underneath my regular name on here. My little subheading and all that, and so to my detriment. so keep it simple isn't in my vocabulary. Cool. Okay, so got your website, newsletter, and we got the anthology coming. You can find me there. I want you, if you're looking at that link and you see where to find me, I have not been doing my best. So you can grade me. After having this talk with Kelsey, I got some work to do. So you can go to that link and see what's there. And then maybe in a month from now, you can see if I took the information in and if I did my homework and I finally got a little more consistency and took some of the things I learned here and implemented them. All right.
Heck yeah. Heck yeah. And then I also have your Instagram link.
Yeah, I am going back to putting artwork on there. I kind of missed it for all my complaining because I was worried about getting scraped or AI and all the ethics of it. I was like, you know what? I hate that they took that from me. Even if I didn't get as much traffic or likes or whatever, it was still nice just to be like, hey, I just did this cool thing, or I'm working on this, trying to figure it out. Here it is. And so I am going back to posting artwork again. So
there you go.
yeah, or kids pictures or whatever, So yeah, or beach pictures. So
yeah, well, I mean, if the headlines are anything to go by, it's that AI is losing its luster. So
so did it eat its own tail? I wonder. Yeah. So but also for the C3 group, should we mention the where they can find the C3?
Yes. So we have our YouTube channel, youtube.com/at Columbus Cartoon Coalition. Hold on, I said that wrong. youtube.com// Columbus Cartoon Coalition. Yes. Yeah. We also have our Instagram, which is instagram.com/c3.ohio.
And we have a Kickstarter or crowdfunder of sorts coming up too as well, and there'll be even more interviews. So if you want to know more about each artist and creator's deep dive and how they approach their works. So yeah, I mean it's a lot of stuff is coming.
Subscribe for those.
Subscribe, please. Subscribe.
Yes.
So, okay. All right. Well, Kelsey, thank you so much. It was really informative, and I know there's a lot more we can cover. And I imagine we might have a sequel or two, to some of these things as people start to open up their opportunities. So
heck yeah, there's a lot that I could talk about with newsletters.
Blogs, newsletters, just daisy chaining all of them together and what the right workflow is to try and be effective and efficient without sacrificing all of your labor and time so you can still create the work that you want to create. That's always on my mind. So I know I have got follow-up questions, later on, but I'll save them for another interview. So
well, we'll just have to do a follow-up of these. So if y'all would like to see that, be sure to give this video a like.
You gotta let us know in the comments too. Ask follow-up questions.
Call to action.
Call to action. There we go. So okay, speaking of call to action, I think we're going to call this one done. So thank you and good night.
Thank you so much for watching. Y'all are awesome.
Good.